Kia ora te whānau. Today we're going over the same achievement objective, 1.3, communicate about number, but slightly different. The key phrase we're looking at is Kotahi te rākau, which means there's one tree. Let's see how we go. Now, first things first, we need to learn about the vocab, the numbers. You would be familiar with this. Kotahi, rua, toru, wha, rima, ono, whitu, waru, iwa, and te kau. We won't go over te kau, but you should know these. However, there's one thing that's different. Right here. Kotahi. It's not just tahi, it's kotahi. When you're counting numbers by itself, when you're counting for the sake of counting, you don't need to say kotahi. But when you are counting things, for example, pens or any object really, you need to have the ko in front of it. This only applies for one, so you don't need to apply it to the other ones. Now here's the other vocab. These are the common nouns. The reason why we're focusing on common nouns is because the way we're counting today only applies for common things, not people. Ka pai, hence why there are no people's names here. Starting off from the top. Rākau, kuaha, heki, pātai, ipu, whare, pene, motoka, tsuru, paoro, pea, kau. Now here is the pātai, the question that we are covering today. E hia ngā things. So, common nouns. Okay, so what we referred before, and not proper nouns like people's names, for example. Here means how many. Ngā is the plural form of the. Now, it is a little bit unique. When you're counting in te reo Māori, the particle before the here changes depending on what you're counting. Okay? When you're counting common nouns, common things, this is the e particle, particularly for counting objects, not people. This particle changes depending on what you're counting. But for the main segment of this lesson, you only really need to know e, because we're just counting things. Alright, let's go over the first example. E hia ngā rākau. How many trees are there? E hia ngā pea. How many pears are there? Now, pear has several meanings, and one of the other meanings is bear. So, context matters. Last one. E hia ngā kau. E hia ngā kau. How many cows are there? One thing I did forget to mention is the reason why it is ngā here and not te. In English, you wouldn't say, how many cow is there? Because that implies there's only one. So just like English, when you're asking the questions, it's going to always be ngā, plural form of the. Alright, the whakautu, the answer. This is how you answer. E, number, ngā, things. Remember, things is what we referred to, the common nouns. Ngā is the plural form of the. Number is number, and again, remember, it is a particular particle for this, for counting things. So, to answer those questions above, you'd say e toru ngā rākau. Toru is 3, so there are 3 trees. E rima ngā pea. There are 5 pears. And lastly, this one is a little bit tricky. You drop the e right here when you have kotahi. When there's only one, you drop the e. Also, because you are saying there's only one cow, you need to say te instead of ngā, because ngā is the plural form of the. We want the singular the, which is te. And you have cow. So you're saying there's one cow. Now, here's a further learning. If you don't want to learn this part, you don't need to. But I'm going to go over it. First one. E hia ngā pea a tio. How many pairs does tio have? In the section above, we cut it right here. You can add on the tail to see who owns what. And you can put te kaiako if you want to, or te tauira. So how many pairs does the teacher have? And you can say that by replacing this bit. Second one, tokohia ngā tamariki. This will be similar structure, but because tamariki is people, you gotta use the particle toko instead of e. So instead of e, you'd say toko. No gap in between here either. So you'd say tokohia ngā tamariki. How many children are there? To answer it, you add toko as a particle, then add the number. Toko rima ngā tamariki. There are 5 children. And lastly, kotahi te kia hautū. Kotahi is 1. Te, again singular. Kia hautū. In the curriculum, this is principal. I would personally use tumuaki for school principal. However, the reason why I put this down is because just like one of the examples above where there was only one cow, here you do the same thing by dropping toko. You drop toko as a particle because there's only one. So you'd say kotahi te. Because there's only one, you do not use ngā. No, you do not use ngā. Kotahi te kia hautū. So for your class, this is fairly easy to do if you have nailed down the words for the nouns that you're going to count before you do this. So you can be counting pens, you can be counting how many chairs there are, and so on. The other thing I forgot to mention is what happens when the number is 10 or more. Do you add the particle? The answer is no, you do not add that particle. For example, it could be te kau. Te kau ngā tūru. There are 10 chairs. For this example, you do not need to have e because the number is 10 or above. If the digit or the highest place value on the left hand side is not 1, you'd leave the particle e in front of it. For example, 54. Rima te kau mā whā. The leftmost digit is 5, which is not 1. Therefore, you would add the e. So it would be e rima te kau mā whā. However, if the leftmost digit does have a 1, for example, 102, you would drop the e and say kotahi rau mā rua, 102. Last example, 1036. Again, the leftmost digit is 1, so you would drop the e and say kotahi mano toru te kau mā ono. Ka pai? I hope you learned something new today. Karawhiua, give it a go, and all the best. Kia kaha te reo Māori. Ka kite anō. See you in the next video.